I recently went to a tournament, and it was bad. And I'm not talking about the result, because I can live with the 3 out of 5. But the rule set was bad. Let me explain. So this was an unrated tournament, and the rules were that it was 20 minutes per game.
What is that?
Not 10 minutes for each side like it should be, but 20 minutes per game.
Bruh.
Now, I'm not sure why they couldn't just buy clocks, as we had to pay $40, I think, to enter, but they had 20 minutes for the whole game. Now, that poses an obvious question. What happens if the time runs out and nobody has won? Well, that is when a really smart rule comes in. Peace points, which is the amount of points that you have at the end of the game, will determine who won. So, a pawn is worth 1 point, a queen is worth 9 points, a rook is worth 5 points, a bishop is worth 3 points, and a knight is worth 2.5. Alright, well certainly that won't create any weird problems with that, right? Well, let's look at this first game. So, we're just going to skip past the opening because it was a Carnaval, and we got all of this stuff. So, if you notice in this position, I have a knight for a bishop, which means technically, by the rules of the tournament, I'm losing by half a point. So we get all the way over to this position, which is technically winning for white, very slightly. And then he makes this mistake. And right here, he is getting absolutely cooked. Now, I play this move, and the reason why I say winner twice for both players is because there was no more time in the game left. White was still deciding which move to make. Now, this is quite clearly winning for black, as white cannot really stop bishop a3 coming in with this checkmate, and if you take, then rook b8, and white is just getting absolutely cooked. But white actually wins, because he has a bishop for a knight, which means he's up half a point. So white ended up winning this game, and I did not place probably because of this game. And that's very annoying. Let's look at another example. In this game, my opponent took forever. And when I say forever, just take a pause and try to guess how long he took on this move. If you chose 3 minutes, you would be correct. He spent 3 minutes on h6, which allowed me to play in this style where I'm down a pawn. Now, I knew I would be down a pawn and he could just wait out, but I thought, there's no way he would do that, right? Well, we got all the way down to here, and technically I did blunder a knight. But the crazy part about this position is that it's minus 0.5. Yeah, that's crazy. So I push because I really don't know what to do at this point, and it's an unrated tournament, so I'm not trying that hard if it wasn't apparent that it was an unrated tournament. And after all of this stuff, he plays c6, and the time is off. Now, king h1 is an accident. I didn't mean to put that. That's just an extra analysis move. We've made 13 moves, and 20 minutes is gone. Now, if we suppose the longest time I took on a move was 2 minutes, which it is, and I took 10 seconds on every other move, then that means that I don't feel like doing math. But he took a really long time. And the sad part about this position is that it's minus 0.5 for black. It's not even winning, because he cannot really stop anything. So that was a very annoying part about this tournament, but I do actually have 2 games that I want to share that were really nice. So those things were very annoying, but I actually do have a couple games I want to show. So the first game happened like this, and we're just going to speed through the opening because it's really not that important. And he plays a weird line of the Carnaval, and I'm able to win a pawn. Now he goes back, and right here I get really happy because I sacrifice my knight on... Oh, wait, not here. I sacrificed my knight here on d7. He can't take. Now, he did take, and now I can play rook to d8, skewering his queen and his rook. He told me after the game that he could have just waited for the time to run out since he was technically up on material, which I was grateful that he didn't do, but except I realized that the material's actually even, so I think he meant that he could have gone for a draw, as in he could have taken this pawn, and then he could have just waited out right here. He could have waited out right here for it to be a draw, but he didn't do that. He was gracious enough to finish the game, which I eventually won. Now, it would be pretty funny if I did the exact same thing, which actually it ends up happening. I end up sacrificing a piece on d7 once again. He takes this pawn, which allows me to give this check to fork the rook. And he has to play this. But now I sacrifice my bishop. Now, my opponent did not seem like the type of guy who was just going to take the bishop and then wait out the entire time. But he did spend quite a while on this move. And then after this, he blundered checkmate, and I ended up winning the game very quickly. It would be even funnier if this happened a third time. Unfortunately, it didn't happen a third time. But this game was interesting because before the game, my opponent said, "What's your rating? What's your rating?" And since it was the last game, I thought I might as well tell him, 1,500. And he said, "Oh, you might have a chance." And I said, "For third place?" And he said, "No, to beat me." Now, I doubt that he was trying to be arrogant, but I took this on as a challenge. And I ended up blundering consecutive times. But that's really not important because I ended up getting the... Oh, that's another blunder. I ended up getting the win. Very slowly. You just gotta wait. It's coming. Hold on. Wait for it. Yeah, look. I ended up getting the win, which I was very proud about. And I stopped notating, so I actually don't know what happened after this. All I know is that his bishop got trapped and I promoted. And it was really cool. And I looked so cool. And I'm still really... Anyways, let's get out to the game. To the last game of my friend who actually won the tournament. And this was his favorite game. And he actually has it notated here, which you can't see. But that's not important. So he loves playing the Evans Gambit, just like me. And we get into this position. And he said the opponent makes a mistake here. And he is able to get a massive control of the center. Now, Queen b3 is a very normal Evans Gambit move, and it targets this pawn on f7, which is a lot better because the c pawn's not here because it's almost always moved to c3. Queen f6 looks like the most normal move to defend it, but it's actually a lot worse because now e5 comes in, and it was played. Now you have to play Queen g6, and then eventually there will be some knight h4 lines. Obviously not right now because... obviously. But it allows white to get a lot of tempos on the queen. Like bishop d3 was the main move, but he didn't play that. He played a much more natural move. But this seems a bit rushed because he hasn't even moved this knight yet, which he is going to move to e7 in the first place. So this move will essentially, he'll be looking into absolutely nothing. I would think d5 was better because knight a5 is not really a threat. For example, like if we go back one move and he plays d5, if he goes there, oh, never mind, it is a threat. Okay, well that was my bad. I didn't mean that. But yeah, okay, maybe I wouldn't have played that. Maybe I would have. Not important. Bishop d3 was the best move, attacking the queen, and we're going to know that I did that. Also, I'm going to leave it in because I'm way too lazy to edit this. Anyway, he sacrifices a pawn, and now the best move is for black to take and take. And now, after this line, which ends up happening in the game, white's rook is technically trapped, but after knight c3, for example, if black tries to castle immediately, there's no knight on c6 to defend this knight. So if you end up castling, that's just a free knight. And this bishop ends up doing a lot more on this square, now that there's no knight. But anyway, his opponent here plays d6, trying to block out. But as many Evans Gambit players know, this is not a good opening. This is not good in general because now white can take. And... yeah, black realizes here that if he takes back, rook e1 check is coming, stuff like that. Although it was the best move, bishop e6, I guess just trying to trade off on the light squares, but queen takes b7, and the light squares are way too weak. Anyway, my friend trades here, and then he takes, so normal stuff. I'm not really sure. He says, he has it annotated right here. He says that he could have played rook e1 pinning the queen, but I thought that attacking the rook in the corner was better. So, yeah, I guess technically it's not really that big of a deal. He's still winning, and Technically, ironically, he's not even up on material, so his opponent technically could have waited out the time. As we know, this is a completely flawless tournament setup that works every time, which is why the Grandmasters use it. But anyway, it's mate in 9 now, so my friend executes this flawlessly. Man, I cannot talk. And he resigns, but this is checkmate like that. So yeah, a really nice game by my friend. Now, I'm not saying that this was the most horrible tournament ever and these guys really suck for making tournaments. Obviously, this was just supposed to be a fun tournament that was unrated and wasn't really supposed to be super sweaty, but they definitely could have done a better job at making the rules more fun and more fair for each person. I'll see you next time, and make sure you subscribe, because if you're still watching, then you obviously like my content.
Everybody was kung fu fighting, I become fast as lightning. Although the future is a little bit frightening, it's the book of your life that you're writing.